But don't fret, I mean, did you like Crash Team Racing? Yeah? Good. Well, have I got the steal for you? Because for the low price of $3, you can get Crash Team Racing but on the PS2 with better graphics and you fall through the floor all the time!
Oh yes, sign me up, Banuka boy. So Crash Nitro Kart was sort of a sequel slash spiritual successor to Crash Team Racing for the PS2 era, and oh boy does it feel like a game stuck in the shadow of its better big brother that the parents love more. In many ways this is just a carbon copy of Crash Team Racing, but just not as good. It's even apparent in the adventure mode. The plot of CTR is aliens, and the plot of Nitro Kart is aliens. But instead of Oxide threatening to turn Earth into a giant concrete parking lot, you have this guy called Velo who just steals you to race a bunch of times to entertain other aliens on another planet. That's basically it. And his beard is the shape of the first letter of his name.
I mean, what kind of asshole does that?
Nitro Kart does actually give you a good first impression. Instead of making you pick one character only for the entire adventure like in CTR, you get to pick from either Team Bandicoot or Team Cortex, allowing you to swap between 3 different characters with their own unique driving styles and kart stats whenever you want to in between all of the races. And that's not all. You even get unique cutscenes for each team throughout the story mode based on who you pick. But then you realise that they didn't bother to fix the facial animations for the masks.
You will have to race in order to win the Galaxy Circuit and save Earth for us to conquer!
Welcome to the future of gaming, everyone! This is the PS2... Hey!
What's my name? Easy. Sloppy. Because that's what this game is. And that's a massive shame to me, because as far as pushing the Crash Kart racing games forward goes, Nitro Kart gave us a fair amount new and good. This was the game that introduced a new boost formula where the closer you leave the drift meter to the burnout, the faster boost you're rewarded with. A brilliant risk and reward system that they later brought back for Nitro Fuel. They gave us unique track designs with trap crates to break that activate different obstacles on the track to sabotage other players. There are some great new items like the tornado that picks up anybody it touches and goes around half the track. There's anti-gravity gimmicks in the levels that Mario would later copy in Mario Kart 8 11 years later. The adventure mode has this frenzy system where a meter slowly charges with your teammates throughout the race, after which you're able to use as many random items as you can before the timer runs out. The visuals can be absolutely breathtaking for a PS2 game, and hell, they even brought back the staples from CTR that made the adventure mode stand out in the first place, like the 3 token collection races, crystal grabbing arenas, and the time trial relic races. And since they already copied so much that worked from CTR, it would only make sense for them to copy the addictive, maniacal, and bouncy control style. But they don't. Nitro Kart feels like the developers witnessed the birth of a miracle child, and while the mother was still splayed, shoved it back in. Nitro Kart is an unbirthed baby that was already born.
I need therapy.
Even though you're not playing the game right now, you can probably see the downgrade just from the footage. Nitro Kart has absolutely no sense of speed or heaviness to the karts to make it feel like you're burning rubber against the terrain. It feels like you're floating along it. It's very flat and unreactive, which wouldn't be so bad if the jumping and drifting didn't feel limp and splatty, and the turning didn't feel like you were unfolding an ironing board, but it does. Especially with the highest speed, lowest turn characters, unless you're drifting, it barely feels like you even turn at all, and you even slow down if you hold a turn for too long, because clearly someone thought you weren't going slow enough. Even driving into the levels is a pain. Driving into the levels is difficult. Stop judging me, it's very hard. Why are you looking at me like that, engine? Oh look, we've got a boss race heading our way. I wonder who will be fighting from the Crash universe today.
Oh. Him.
This delightful little cherub is called Crunk. Don't know who he is? Neither do I. And instead of being introduced in a comically personalized way, where he's talking directly to the camera and intimidating the player, he instead gets forced into racing us by Velo. And then he says, "Nah, I don't want to race them, they're smelly." And then Velo says,
"Oh, come on, please, Daddy."
And then Crunk says yes. Yeah, that is the quality of the boss races we have in Nitro Kart. And as for the race itself, well, I've got to be honest, I'm not even sure it was a race. See ya later, monkey beta. At this point, I'd rather have a race against that thing in Star Fox 64 called Bacon. The pathetic boss races aren't all either when it comes to the difficulty of Nitro Kart. In fact, when you mix in the Team Frenzy mechanic and new boost formula that is outright broken when you get the hang of it, this ends up becoming the easiest kart racer I think I've ever played. And the boss races don't even allow you to use Frenzy, so that's how easy they are. Topping all of this off is a piddling number of tracks compared to CTR as well.
That did not feel good.
And I don't even want to know what noise you'd make if you did feel good.
And even though this is supposed to be a high-tech advanced PS2 follow-up to Crash Team Racing, Nitro Kart ends up being one of the most unpolished games I've ever played. Constantly clipping through the floor is one thing, but it's another thing when the frame rate tanks whenever there's more than 3 karts on the same screen. The shields don't even work half the time, and in some races you're even able to crash. How the hell did you do that? I genuinely love the track designs and the visuals of Nitro Kart, but even if you can get past the performance problems, there's no point coming back to this whatsoever since it controls worse than Crash Team Racing and doesn't feel as good to play, which in a kart racer I would argue is the main thing you need to get right. That's why games like Mario Kart 64 or Double Dash hold up so well after all these years. Yeah, they've put some of the tracks from these games in the future installments, but you can always feel safe going back to these ones because you know you're going to be having a great time controlling the karts. Oh, and by the way, the loading screens are terrifying. Crash is dead!